This is Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Happy Duty into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Duty in a Google search for my site. I'll be reading from Rolling Stone magazine. It was a fresh release yesterday. The McDonald's, Times Square, New York City, Manhattan. This is the most conspicuous Times Square. McDonald's. It's the one with a big marquee on 42nd Street, between 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue. Reader note. This is very long. This is part 2. It appears to be written by Sean Penn, who's an impressive writer. This is news to me. I might take a break or two, which means I interrupt and start a third one, but perhaps I will take a short break. Listeners, please pay attention. If I decide to continue, the Google will put your video will become frozen. Appears to be frozen, though it's not. Google puts a still image, a default image. I think it says Tom Duty, but it is no picture. And the audio, of course, stops because I stop talking and it freezes. However, the minutes and seconds on the video will continue to play. So if that happens and you want to continue to listen, just fast forward to where the video and audio resume. I will resume about 1/3 of the way through my text. I have at least an hour, 90 more minutes of reading. One more reader note. It's 6:03 in the morning, and it's a Sunday morning. This is the back entrance to McDonald's. So during the time I'm reading, I should get some pedestrian traffic. That's why I'm here. However, there's very little traffic. City that never sleeps is a lie. New York sleeps, sound and quiet, and doesn't necessarily wake up early. We left Los Angeles at 7 a.m. By 9 p.m., the dash clock, we arrived at a clearing where several SUVs are parked. A small crew of men hover on a knoll. Above, I see a few weathered bungalows. I get out of the truck, search the faces of the crew for approval that I may walk to the trunk, securing my bag. Nods follow. I move. And when I do, there is this right beside the truck, the world's most famous fugitive, El Chapo. My mind is an instant flipbook of the hundreds of pictures and news reports I had scored. There is no doubt this is the real deal. He's wearing a casual patterned silk shirt, dressed in black jeans, and he appears to be remarkably well-groomed and healthy for a man on the run. He opens Kate's door and greets her like a daughter returning from college. It seems important to him to express the warm affection in person that, until now, he'd only occasion to communicate from afar. After greeting her, he turns to me with a hospitable smile. Putting out his outstretched hand, I take it. He pulls me into a compadre hug, looks me in the eyes, and speaks a lengthy greeting in Spanish, too fast for my ears. I gathered up the pressured mind to explain to him in broken Spanish that I would depend on Kate to translate as the night went on. Only then does he realize his greeting was not understood. He jokes to his crew, laughing at his own assumption that I can speak Spanish, and at my momentary disorientation that I've let him go on such length in his greeting. El Chapo, the author and then fugitive, El Chapo Guzman, October 2nd. The photo was taken for verification purposes, although a long diner and conversation, Chapo granted Penn's request for a formal interview, courtesy of Sean Penn. We are brought up some steps to a flat area on the knoll beside the bungalows. A local family caters a buffet of tacos, enchiladas, chicken, rice, beans, fresh salsa, and carne asada, an oft-used cartel term describing the decimated bodies in cities like Juarez, after mass narco executions. Hence, I go for tacos. He walks up to a picnic table. We are offered drinks. We sit in illumination. Of some string lights, but the perimeter falls into abrupt darkness. I see no more than 35 people. Chapo later confided to El Alto that, out of sight, another 100 of his soldiers were present in the immediate area. There are no long barrel weapons in sight, no Danny Trejo types. My impression of his crew, more in sync with what one would imagine of students at a Mexico City university. Clean, cut, well-dressed, and mannered. Not a smoker in the bunch. Only 2 or 3 of the guys wear small shoulder bags that hang low beside their waists, where I assume small arms are carried. Our host, it seems to me, is concerned that Kate, as the lone female among us, not face immediate visions of force. This assumption would be bore out several hours later. As we sit at the picnic table, introductions are made. To my left, Alonzo. Alonzo, as it turns out, one of El Chapo's lawyers. When speaking of El Chapo's lawyers, it gets a little murky. During his imprisonment, the only visits allowed were with lawyers. Evidently, some who would be more accurately described as lieutenants, have been dubbed or perhaps certified by the expedition of power as part of his legal team. Alonzo visited El Chapo at Altiplano just 2 hours before his audacious escape. According to Alonzo, he was aware of his escape plan, but he notes that he did not spare him any brutal beating by interrogation afterward. To my right, Rodrigo. Rodrigo is godfather of Chapo's twin 4-year-old girls by his 26-year-old beauty queen wife. Emma Cornell Rodrigo is one who has me concerned. They look in his eye, is far away, but locked dead on me. My speculation goes audio. I hear chainsaws. I feel spatter. I fear splatter. I see Sean's deputable paranoia. I am Sean's deputable paranoia. My eyes are compelled to drift to Rodrigo's right. There is Ivan, Chapo's eldest son. At 32, he is considered heir to the Sinaloa cartel. He's attentive with a calm maturity. Like his brother, he boasts a fabulous wristwatch. Directly across from me, our host with Kate to his right. Besides Alonzo, Alfredo, El Chapo sits at the end of the table. Espinoza still standing. Apologized to Chapo and asks if he may lay down for an hour to rest his back. Espinoza's funny this way. It's as if we spent endless grueling hours hiking a vertical volcanic summit to the cone, and not just 3 steps for viewing the ring fault of the caldera. He says, I'm going to take a nap. I'll look in the hole later. With Kate translating, I begin to explain my intentions. I felt increasingly that I had arrived as a curiosity to him, the lone gringo among my colleagues who'd ridden on the coattails of El Chapo's faith in Kate. I felt his amusement as I put my cards on the table. He asked about my relationships with the Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, with what seemed to be a probing of my willingness to be vilified through associations. I speak of our friendship in a way that seems to pass an intuitive litmus test, measuring the independence of my perspective. I tell him up front that I have a family member who worked with the Drug Enforcement Agency, and that through my work in Haiti, I'm CEO JRHRO, a non-government organization based in Port-au-Prince. I have many relationships inside the United States government. I assured him those relationships were no means related to my interest in him. My only interest was to ask questions and deliver his responses. To be weighed by readers, whether in balance or contempt. I tell him that I understood that in mainstream narrative of narcos, the undersung hypocrisy is in the complicity of buyers. I could not sell him on the bait and switch, and I knew that my writing of any piece, my only genuine cards to play were to expose myself as one fascinated and willing to suspend judgment. I understood that whatever else might be said of him, it was clear to me he was not a tourist in our big world. Throughout my introduction, Chapo smiled, a warm smile. In fact, in what would be a 7-hour sit-down, I saw him without a smile, only in brief flashes. As has been said of many notorious men, he has an indisputable charisma. When I ask about his dynamic with Mexican government, he pauses. Talking about politicians, I keep my opinion to myself. They go do their real thing and I do mine. They go do their thing and I do mine. See footage of El Chapo after his recapture below. Beneath his smile, there is a doubtlessness to his facial expression. A question comes to mind. I observe his face, both as he speaks, as while he listens. What is in that removes all doubt from a man's eyes? Is it power, admirable clarity, or soullessness? Soullessness. Wasn't it that my moral conditioning was obliged to recognize him? Wasn't it soulness that I must perceive in him for myself to perceive there as other than Pollyanna, an apologist? I tried hard, folks. I really did. And reminded myself over and over of the incredible life loss, the devastation existing in the corners of the narco world. I don't want to be portrayed as a nun, El Chapo says, though his portrayal had not occurred to me. The simple man from a simple place, surrounded by simple affections of his sons to their father, and his toward them does not literally strike me as a big bad wolf of lore. His presence conjures questions of cultural complexity in the context of survivalists and capitalists, farmers and technocrats, clever entrepreneurs, in every ilk. Some say silver, and others lead. Disgusting. Disgusting. Listeners, I just can't help but think you're able to catch some of the background audio. This is McDonald's, and it's the Adele just started. I resume. A server delivers a bottle of tequila. El Chapo pours us 3 fingers. In a toast, he looks to Kate. I don't usually drink, he says, but I want to drink with you. After a raise of glass, I take a polite slip. He asks me if many people in the United States know about him. Oh yeah, I said, and informed him that night before leaving Mexico, I had seen that the Fusion channel was repeating the special edition, Chasing El Chapo. He seemed to delight in the absurdity of this. As he and his cohort share a chuckle. I look to the sky and wonder how funny it would be if there was a weaponized drone above us. We are in a clearing, sitting right out in the open. I down the tequila, and the drone goes away. I give in to the sense of security offered by the calm Chapo and his men. There is a pervasive feeling that if there were a threat, they would know it. We eat, drink, and talk for hours. He is interested in the movie business and how it works. He's unimpressed with its financial yield. The P&L high side doesn't add up to the downside risk for him. He suggests to us that we consider switching our career paths to the oil business. He says he would aspire to the energy sector, but that his funds, being illicit, restricted his investment opportunities. He cites, but asked me not to name in print, a host of corrupt major corporations, both with Mexico and abroad. He notes with delight, disdain, several through which his money has been laundered, and who take their own cynical slice of the narco pie. How much money will you make writing this article? He asked. I answer that when I do journalism, I take no payment. I could see that to him, the idea of doing any kind of work without payment is a fool's game, unlike the gangsters we're used to and the John Gotti who claimed to be a simple businessman hiding behind numerous international front companies. El Chapo sticks to an illicit game, proudly volunteering it. I supply more heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana than anybody else in the world. I have a fleet of submarines, airplanes, trucks, and boats. He is entirely unapologetic against the challenges of doing business, such a clandestine industry. He has, but an empire. I am reminded of press accounts alleging $100 million bounty. The man across from me is said to have put on a Donald Trump's life. I mentioned Trump. El Chapo smiles, ironically saying, "Ah, mi amigo." His unguarded will to speak freely, his comfort with his station in life, and ownership of extraordinary justifications conjure Tony Montana in Oliver Stone's Scarface. It's the diner scene where Elvira, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, walks out on Al Pacino, Tony Montana, loudly assailing him in a public place. The patrons at the restaurant stare at him, but rather than hide in humiliation, he stands and lectures them. You're all a bunch of fucking assholes. You know why? You don't have the guts to be what you want to be. You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. So what's that make of you? Good? You're not good. You just know how to hide, how to lie. Me? I don't have that problem. Me? I will always tell the truth, even when I lie. So say good night to the bad guys. Come on, last time you're going to see a bad guy like this again. Let me tell you. El Chapo, for the last 2 decades, El Chapo has left most influential and profitable drug syndicate in the world, U.S. DOJ. I'm curious, in the current pandemonium in the Middle East, what impact those frenzied opiate economies may have on his business, I ask him. Of all the countries and cultures with whom you do business, which is most difficult? Smiling, he shakes his head and says, unequivocal none. There's no politician who could answer the same question so clearly, so successfully. But then again, the challenges are quite different for a global power broker who simply removes any obstacle to difficulties. Having explained my intention, I asked if he would grant 2 days for a formal interview. My colleagues would be leaving in the morning, but I offered to stay behind to record our conversations. He pauses before responding. He says, I just met you. I will do it in 8 days. Can you come back in 8 days? I say I can. I asked to take a photograph together so that I could verify to my editors, the Rolling Stone, the planned meeting had taken place. Adelante, he says. We rise from the table as a group and follow Chapo into one of the bungalows. Once inside, we see the first sign of heavy arms. An M16 lies on the couch opposite the neutral white wall against which we would take the photograph. I explained that for authentication purposes, it would be best if we were shaking hands, looking into the camera, but not smiling. He obliges. The picture is taken on Alfredo's cell phone. It would be sent to me at a later date. When we return to the picnic table, it seems to me we've accomplished what we can do. We had to come to agreement that he would submit to a 2-day interview upon my return. As though of surveillance drones and military rides come back into my head, I re-engage the tequila and scan 360 degrees from where my colleagues lay flat and find cover should we have been followed and raid initiated. The darkness, it was difficult to imagine a safe place. And El Chapo's world is anything but. As Espinoza returns from his slumber, Kate, succumbing to the exhaustion, day's journey, and the solstice of a few tequilas, accepts the escort of Chapo to her sleeping quarters. As he walks her alone toward the dimly lit bungalow, I can't help but have a primal moment of concern. I considered offering to accompany them, though the circumstances would certainly prove any protection action futile. Before my adrenaline rush of paranoia can inspire insult or injury, Chapo has returned. But there is a chance. But there is a change. With Kate tucked cozy into bed, his crew and he are fast and furious into body armor, strapping long-barreled weapons and hip-clipped grenades, and battle-ready army of jungle guerrillas who have been standing down earlier on her behalf are now returning to what I assume is a more typical posture. El Chapo, too, is strapped and ready to command. Following this Clark Kent into Superman extravaganza, Chapo returns to the table. His demeanor, his battle gear, anything but. Espinoza and El Alto shared translation duties. We compared notes on culture. We asked lighthearted questions, though the environment has gotten far less lighthearted. Despite that, I'm feeling frustrated to have to wait 8 days to get him in a corner to ask everything I think the world wants to know. I feel naked without a pen and paper, so I only ask questions one couldn't forget the answers to. Did you know Pablo Escobar? Chapo answers, yes, I met him. Once at his house, big house. He smiles. See your mother much? All the time. I hope we would meet at my ranch and you could meet my mother. She knows me better than I do. But something came up. We had to change the plan. I assume he was insinuating inside information that the ranch had again come under observation by authorities. It has been several hours, and El Alto and I share a nod indicating our mutual sense. The corps of soldiers around El Chapo are getting fidgety, a clock and some kind of ticking in them. I must have been about 4 a.m. It must have been about 4 a.m. by this time. El Chapo stands, concluding the night. Thanking us for our visit, we follow him to where the family who had cooked our dinner stands dutifully behind a serving table. He takes each of them by the hand, graciously giving them thanks, and with a look, he invites us to do the same. He walks us backward to the same bungalow where we had earlier escorted Kate in a narrow, dark passage between ours and an adjacent bungalow. Chapo puts his arm over my shoulder and renews his request that I see him in 8 days. I'll be saying goodbye now, he says. At this moment, I expel a minor travel flatulence. Sorry. And with it, I experience the same chivalry he'd offered when putting Kate to bed. He pretends not to notice. We escape in subtle broom. I join my colleagues inside the bungalow. There are 2 beds and 1 couch, a sort of distance from where Kate can be seen sleeping on the third behind a privacy divider. Espinoza returns to the bed claimed upon our arrival. Now it's down to El Alto and I looking at each other. His 6'3" frame towers above me, knowing he is advertently caught with proximity to the 5'3" couch, and that I, at 5'9", am left standing only inches from a king-size bed. It's a Mexican standoff. We both traveled a hard day, both slightly medicated by tequila, though through the night I only know that it was going to take that I was going to take the short couch. It would be at gunpoint. I negotiate. Listen, man, you don't have to sleep on that couch. The bed is big. We can talk and cuddle. With this prospect, I win the negotiation. In his grace and discretion, El Alto makes his choice. I'll go with the couch. As I collapse on the bed, I hear Chapo's convoy drive away into the night jungle. Testing. That door opens out onto 41st Street between 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue. I'm in McDonald's in between 41st and 42nd Street, New York City, Manhattan. I'm reading from Rolling Stone magazine, released yesterday, Sean Penn's interview of the legendary, currently world's most living, famous drug lord. I resume. Now, 2 hours later, we were abruptly awakened by Alonso. The storm is coming, he says. We have to move. The dirt tracks of the jungle are difficult to navigate when monsoon rains saturate them. We have to beat the rain to the tarmac road. At daybreak, we just make it to pavement as the ocean falls from the sky. A great bolt of lightning is illuminated inside our vehicle like flashbang grenades. Alonso asks Kate to drive. She jumps at the chance to break the monotony and takes the wheel like a trooper. El Alto hops into the flatbed, his sleep-starved brain so hungry for oxygen, and he's obviously oblivious to the pouring rain. In the back seat, Alonso whispers to me, there are multiple military checkpoints along these roads, and they tend to weigh by vehicles with women. In this case, the rain falls hard enough that soldiers have abandoned their posts for cover. Mercifully, we are stopped by no one. Rather than risk being vaporized in a small aircraft by lightning storm, we opt for an 8-hour drive back to the city, where we started. Espinoza reclines in the passenger seat to rest his back. By the time we hit the city, the weather has cleared. We shower in the rooms we booked. 20 minutes later, Kate, Espinoza, and I, along with Alonso, get into 2 taxi cabs and head to the airport. El Alto, who spent his 2 hours sleep the night before on a firm couch a full foot shorter than he, then waterlogged himself in the flatbed, elects to stay behind in the comfort of the hotel bed for the night and leave the following day. Alonso heads to Mexico City, Espinoza, Europe, so Kate and I board a charter back to Los Angeles. Our heads are spinning. We have really just been where we were, with whom we had been. It seemed such a strange dream. Somehow, with all the planning and travel, I still hadn't believed that we'd actually gotten to El Chapo. I'd imagined us arriving to gentle apologies. From some unexplained security reason, the visit could not take place, and we'd be going home to Los Angeles empty-handed. But that's not what happened. El Chapo was arrested on January 8th after gunfire with the military in Sinaloa, PGR. When we land back on our home turf, Kate and I parted ways. I'm picked up by a car service. In the back seat, my LA-based assistant had left a manila envelope and my cell phone. In turn, I turned on the phone to explosions of 2-day backlog of emails and text messages. Ignoring them, I hit my browser for updates. When I didn't know what was not yet being reported was that from the time the weather cleared, a military siege in Sinaloa was imminent. Evidently, El Chapo and his men, after leaving us the night before, had skirted through the jungle back to a ranch property. According to media reports that didn't come until days later, a cell phone among his crew had been tracked. A cell phone among his crew had been tracked from the time the military and the DEA moved in on them. The reports of what happened are conflicted. A source familiar with the cartel informed me on October 3rd that the initial siege had begun. That source and another on the ground in Sinaloa reported that over the next several days, 2 military helicopters were shot down. Mexican Marine ground troops laid siege to several ranch properties. There were additional reports that 13 Sinaloa communities had been ravaged by gunfire. During simultaneous raids, the Commission Nacional de los Derechos Humanos, the National Commission for Human Rights, struggled to enter the area but were prohibited. Villagers protested their treatment by the military. By the time news agencies broadcast the story in the United States, the mayhem throughout Sinaloa in those days had been essentially reduced to nearly successful raid that had surgically targeted only El Chapo and his men. Claimed he had been injured in flight with face and leg wounds. El Chapo's own account would later be shared with me through a BBM exchange he had with Kate on October 6th. There was an operation. 2 helicopters and 6 Blackhawks began a confrontation upon their arrival. The Marines disappeared through the farms. The families had to escape and abandon their homes with fear of being killed. We still don't know how many dead in total. When asked about the reports of his own injuries, Chapo responded, "Not like they say, I only hurt my leg a little bit." 4 days later, I fly from Los Angeles to Lima, Peru, to participate in a World Bank panel discussion. After a few days in Lima and an overnight in Managua, Nicaragua, to visit an old friend on October 11th, the day El Chapo and I agreed to meet. Understandably, he and his own crew had gone dark during the raids. Nonetheless, I board an available flight to nearby Mexico City and leave a message for Alonzo that I would wait in the Mexican airport for several hours to make sure they know that I had honored my commitment to return on the 8th day. I landed in the afternoon, then sat around the airport for 8 hours hoping a stranger will tap me on the shoulder and tell me he's a friend of Alonso's and that I should leave with him. It also occurs to me, once again, that I might be under the eyes of Mexican intelligence DEA. In either case, no contact is made, so I board a flight later that evening on my own and return to Los Angeles. In the weeks that followed, I continued to make attempts to contact El Chapo. In that time, massive sweeps by military and law enforcement led to hundreds of arrests, seizures, and several extraditions of cartel personnel to the United States. Reports that a rising drug gang, the CJNG, that's Jalisco New Generation Cartel, that may have been involved with El Chapo's prison escape, and that CJNG may become, in effect, the paramilitary wing of the Sinaloa cartel. He added the governmental concerns. Have added to governmental concerns. In other words, with the water boiling, our cartel intermediaries had gone principally off radar or possibly been arrested or killed. Finally, Kate is able to reestablish contact through a web of BBM devices. But the heat of enforcement and surveillance had become extreme. I even received a credible tip that the DEA had indeed become aware of our journey to Mexico. Booking any flight to Mexico now would surely raise red flags. I make a plan to hide myself in the trunk of a friend's car and be driven to a waiting rental vehicle. I would then drive the rental from LA to Yuma, Arizona, then cross the border at Algondes. I'm familiar with this crossing. Papers are not checked, and vehicles are waved through without security. I then drive the 80-some-odd miles from the border to the Gran Desierto and the village of El Golfo of Santa Clara, rendezvousing with a cartel plane that could take me to El Chapo. But Kate is insistent that if I am to make that journey, she would have to come with me. The route is relatively safe, but there are some narco-controlled areas, including a few that are not friendly to the Sinaloa cartel. There were 2 military checkpoints the last time I had driven that route. The idea of a gringo driving with a Mexican film star would likely draw too much attention, but Kate would have it no other way. It becomes apparent that the risks outweigh the benefits on all sides, and we decide that instead I will send my questions to El Chapo by BBM. He agrees that we'll record his responses on videotape without being present. I could neither control the questioning nor prod for elaborations to his responses. In addition, every question sent first had to be translated into Spanish. Remarkably, when Chapo has access to hundreds of soldiers and associates at all times, apparently no one speaks English. At the end of each day had passed without receipt of the video. Kate would reassure me that it was only one more day away, but each night El Chapo contacted her with more delays and apparent doubts, not about my injuries, but seemingly about how to make a tape of himself. Kate, let me get this straight. The guy runs a multi-billion-dollar business with a network of at least 50 countries. And there's not one fucker down there in the jungle with whom he speaks a word of friggin' English? Not tonight. You're telling me his BBM went on the blink, that he's got hardly any access to the goddamn computer. Are you saying he doesn't have the technical capability to make a self video and smuggle it into the United States? I ask myself, how the fuck does anyone run a business that way? I go full Trump gringo on Kate, battering. I go full Trump gringo on Kate, battering her daily by phone, text, and encrypted email. In the end, the delay had nothing to do with technical incompetence. Big surprise. Whatever villainy is attributed to this man and his indisputable street genius, he is also humble. Rural Mexico, whose perception of his place in the world offers a window into the extraordinary riddle of cultural disparity, becomes evident that the peasant farmer turned billionaire drug lord seemed to be overwhelmed and somewhat bewildered to the notion that many of interest to the world beyond mountains, that may be of interest to the world beyond the mountains. And the day after day delays might reveal an insecurity of him, like an awkward teenager bashful to go unguided before the camera, or had this been an orchestrated performance? Fasting. I continue to read Sean Penn, El Chapo, Rolling Stone. It's 7 in the morning. I'm at McDonald's between 41st and 42nd, between 7th and 8th Avenue. This door that opens in the view of this webcam opens onto 41st Street. It is the back door of this very big, very loud McDonald's. Finally been jumped through, mostly by Kate, but at my relentless direction. The only retaliation I was left fearing during my engagement with El Chapo and the Sinaloa cartel was the potential wrath of a Mexican actress towards an American actor who had single-mindedly abused his friendship with her to retrieve the needed video. And then an encrypted message came from Kate. Got it! I nearly hit the ceiling with excitement as Kate followed up, dinged on my phone. You pushy motherfucker. I earned that. Eventually, a courier from El Chapo had delivered her the video. Kate and I met up. I made my apologies, and she transferred the video from her device to mine. At home, I turned down the lights, sat with an English transcription provided by Kate, and began with her note. The video runs for 17 minutes. Press play. He sits in a turquoise and navy paisley long-sleeved button-down shirt, clean black slacks on a randomly placed stool. The signature mustache that he wore in our last meeting was gone. His trademark black trucker hat absent. His hair combed, perhaps cap matted, conjuring the vision of a wide-eyed schoolboy, unsung of his teacher's summons. His hands folded across each other, a self-soothing thumb crossed the knuckles of the other. Beside him, a sort of white brick wall topped by chain-link fence. Behind that, a white 4x4 pickup truck. The location appeared as a large ranch-like property with low-lying mountains. Far in the distance, an intermittent cockadoodle of a farm rooster, serving as a great chorus to the interview. Throughout the video, we see farm workers and paramilitary crossing behind him. A German shepherd sniffs the dirt and wanders out of the frame. He begins, I want to make clear that this interview is for the exclusive use of Miss Kate de Castillo and Mr. Sean Penn. The image goes black. When it returns, so has he the comfort of his trucker hat. On my many questions, one of my many questions, El Chapo, a cameraman out of the frame, asked a few of them directly, paraphrases, others, softens, many skips, some altogether. How was your childhood? I remember from the time I was 6 until now, my parents were humbled, very poor, and I remember how my mom made bread to support the family. I would sell it. I sold oranges. I sold soft drinks. I sold candy. My mom was a hard worker. She worked a lot. We grew corn, beans, and took care of my grandmother's cattle and chopped wood. And how did you get involved in the drug business? Well, from the time I was 15 and after, when I came from, which is municipality, Badira Guato. I was raised on a ranch named La Tuna. The area, and up until today, there were no job opportunities. The only way to have money to buy food to survive is to grow poppy, marijuana, and at that age I began to grow it, to cultivate it, and to sell it. That's what I can tell you. How did you leave there? How did it all expand? From there, from my ranch, I started to leave at 18. I went to Culiacan, and then after to Guadalajara. But never without visiting my ranch. Even up until today, because my mom, thanks to God, is still alive, out there in our ranch, which is La Tuna, and so that is how things have been. How has your family life changed from then to now? Very good. My children, my brother, my nephew, we all get along. Very normal, very good. And now that you're free, how has it affected you? Well, as for being free, happy because freedom is really nice. And pressure, well, for me, it's normal because I have to be careful. For a few years now in certain cities, I don't feel anything that hurts my health or my mind. I feel good. It is true what they say about drugs destroy humanity and being harmed. Well, it's a reality that drugs destroy. Unfortunately, as I said, where I grew up, there was no other way. And there still is no way to survive. The way to work in our economy is to be able to make a living. Do you think it is true that you are responsible for a high level of drug addiction in the world? No, that is false. Because the day I don't exist, it's not going to decrease in any way at all. Drug trafficking, that's false. Did your drug business grow and expand when you went to jail? For what I can tell and what I know, everything is the same. Nothing has decreased, nothing has increased. What about the violence attached to this type of activity? In part, it's because already some people are already grown up with problems. And there's some envy. They have information against someone else. That is what creates violence. Do you consider yourself a violent person? No, sir. Are you prone to violence, or do you use it as a last resort? Look, all I do is defend myself, nothing more. But do I start trouble? Never. What is your opinion about the situation in Mexico? What is the outlook for Mexico? Well, drug trafficking is already part of our culture. That originated from our ancestors, and not only in Mexico. This is worldwide. Do you encounter your activity, organization, a cartel? No, sir, not at all. Because people who dedicate their lives to this activity do not depend on me. How has this business evolved from the time you started up until today? Big difference. Today there's lots of drugs, and back then the only ones we knew was marijuana and poppy. What's the difference in people now compared to back then? Big difference, because now, day after day, villages are getting bigger. There's more of us and lots of different ways of thinking. What is the outlook for the business? Do you think it will disappear? No, it will not, because as time goes by, we are more people, and this will never end. Do you think terrorism activities in the Middle East in any way impact the future of drug trafficking? No, sir, it doesn't make a difference at all. You saw how the final days of Escobar were. How do you see your final days with respect to this business? I know one day I will die. I hope it's of natural causes. The U.S. government thinks that the Mexican government does not want to arrest you. What they want to do is kill you. What do you think? No, I think if they find me, they'll arrest me, of course. With respect to your activities, what do you think the impact on Mexico is? Do you think there is a substantial impact? Not at all. Not at all. Why? Because drug trafficking does not depend on just one person. It depends on a lot of people. What is your opinion about who is to blame here? Those who sell drugs or the people who use drugs and create a demand for them? What is the relationship between producer, sale, and consumption? If there was no consumption, there would be no sales. It is true that consumption day after day becomes bigger and bigger, so it sells and sells. Testing. We have avocado. It's good for you. Lime is good for you. Guanabana is good for you. But we never hear anyone doing it publicly with respect to drugs. Have you done anything to induce the public to consume more drugs? Not at all. That attracts attention. People in a way want to know how it feels, how it tastes. And then the addiction gets bigger. Do you have any dreams? Do you dream? Whatever is normal, but dreaming daily, no. But you must have some dreams, some hopes for your life. I want to live my final days God gives me. If you could change the world, would you? For me, the way things are, I'm happy. How is your relationship with your mom? My relationship perfect, very well. Is it one of respect? Yes, sir. Respect, affection, and love. How do you see the future of your sons and daughters? Very well. They get along, right? The family is tight. How about your life? How has your life changed? How have you lived it since you escaped? Lots of happiness because of my freedom. Do you ever use drugs? No, sir. Many years ago, yes, I did try them. But an addict? No. How long ago? I haven't done any drugs for at least 20 years. Did I not worry that you might have been putting your family at risk with your escape? Yes, sir. For your recent escape, did you pursue your freedom at any cost? At the expense of anybody? I never thought of hurting anyone. All I did was ask God, and things worked out. Everything was perfect. I'm here. Thank God. 2 times you escaped. It is worth mentioning there was no violence. With me, it did not come to that. In other situations, what has been seen, things occurred differently. But here, we did not use any violence. Bearing in mind what has been written about you, one can come see on TV, things are said about you in Mexico. What kind of messages would you like to convey of people of Mexico? Well, I can say it's normal that people have mixed feelings because some people know me and others don't. That's the reason I say it's normal, because those who do not know me can have their doubts about sharing in this case. I'm a good person or not. If I ask you to define yourself as a person, if I ask you to pretend you're not Joaquín, instead you are the person who knows him better than anyone else in the world, how would you describe yourself? Well, if I knew him with respect, from my point of view, it's a person who's looking for problems not a person looking for problems in any way. Since our late night visit in Mexico Mountain raids on ranches, there have been relentless a war zone. Navy helicopters waging air assaults, inserting troops, helo shot down by Sinaloa cartel gunmen, Marines killed, cartel fighters killed, Compassions killed or displaced. Rumors spread that El Chapo escaped to Guatemala or even further to South America, but no, he's right there where he was born and raised. On Friday, January 18th, it happened. El Chapo was captured and arrested alive. I think of that night, of the calm before the storm. Otherworldly experiences of sitting with a man seemingly serene, despite his living a reality so surreal. I had not gotten the kind of in-depth interview I had hoped to achieve, not challenged by checkers with chess, nor vice versa, but perhaps at least retrieved a glimpse from the other side, and what, for me, an affirmation, a dumb show of demonization, and that demands such an extraordinary focus of assets toward the capture or killing of any one individual black hat. Still today, there's little boys in Sinaloa who play money, pesos, whose fathers and grandfathers before them harvest the only product they've ever known to morph. They play pesos into real dollars. They wonder at the outrage of our children, friends, neighbors, bosses, banks, brothers and sisters finance the whole damn thing. Without a paradigm shift, understanding the economics and illness of addiction, parents in Mexico and the U.S. will increasingly risk replacing the standard parting question of their teens off for a social evening. Where are you going tonight? Where are you dying tonight? El Chapo. It won't be long, I'm sure, before the Sinaloa cartel next shipment to the United States is the man himself. Actor, writer, director Sean Penn has written for From the Front Lines in Haiti, Iraq, Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. He wishes to dedicate this article to his parents, to the parents of the slain Chicago youth and Rodrigo Laura Bonilla, public servant, father, and hero. That's the end of the Rolling Stones text. This is Taylor Swift. So to timestamp this video, this is Bad Blood, which is sort of fresh, a few months. Taylor Swift. And at the moment, number one in the British pop charts, probably high on all pop charts, is Justin Bieber, Love Yourself. And dancing in that video, Justin is not in the video, dancing in that video is a married dance duo from San Diego named Mari and Keone. It's the beginning of 2016, and the presidential candidates, at least one, has spoken about the Sean Penn interview, and the White House, in a White House press conference, has spoken about this Sean Penn video. And both have faulted the actions of Sean Penn for doing this, to engaging a criminal, essentially being part of the crime. There's also Sean Penn's interview that helped lead the authorities to Chapo. So I will finish with just a brief editorial. Mark Rubio is, at this moment, my nightmare candidate. Now, I claim that the true nightmare candidate is the Arkansas governor, Mike Huckabee. So I'm through this whole campaign until he resigns his candidacy. I will consider him my nightmare candidate. But a close second is Marco Rubio. And he is the son of Cuban immigrants who no doubt experienced hardship in their immigration. He speaks of it as a characterizing factor of him. He is a puppet. He is certainly not more honorable than Chapo Guzman, and he's certainly far less honorable than Sean Penn. Sean Penn is a skilled writer. He is a man who wants to use his fame and fortune to do something good. He's done all this, taken all this risk, and he wasn't paid for it. He is obviously doing more in this interview good than Marco Rubio has done his entire life. He has denounced Sean Penn, called it grotesque, and I fault Marco Rubio for faulting Sean Penn. What Sean Penn has done here is good. I also believe Marco Rubio faulted Sean Penn without reading the interview. I think if you read this interview, it gives it substance that just can't be denounced by any reasonable person in the way that Rubio has and the way the White House has. It's not a simple story of good and bad. That's the end of my editorial. This has been Tom Duty, middle-aged American living in New Jersey near the Lincoln Tunnel. If you were to visit my website, you would type Howdy Doody into Google. You'll find the correct spelling of the famous puppet. You then combine Tom Duty in a Google search for my site. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, good evening, or restful night's sleep. Ciao.